So apparently 30 years of mortgage payments just wasn't enough. Now President Trump wants to give you a 50-year mortgage. Because nothing says American dream like making your last mortgage payment from the nursing home. This basically means that you can buy that dream cabin in the mountains and still be making payments when they put you in the mountain. All right, so let's talk about this. Is going to be huge. Hey everybody, my name's Tim Gibson. My channel is all about North Georgia real estate. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're thinking about moving to North Georgia, or if you're considering listing your home in the area, I'd be more than happy to help. My contact info is on the screen. Most of us growing up were taught not to talk about religion or politics, but this headline grabbed my attention, so I thought I would bring it up and see what you think about this. We're diving into the recent headline that President Trump has said he will want to implement a 50-year mortgage. So why does that matter? How could it affect those of us that are wanting to buy a home with a mortgage? And how could it affect the housing market? So let's break it down. I can already feel all of you racing to the comments section to just tell me about your political stance, and that's fine. Go ahead, y'all discuss. I'm just gonna give you the info and see what you think. As we all know, housing affordability has really gotten out of hand since COVID. House prices have shot through the roof and everything is expensive. I'm seeing trailers on the market for $350,000 in North Georgia. So the main goal, I would imagine, for having a 50-year mortgage is to reduce the monthly payments so that people can actually afford to live in these houses that are so expensive. But what's the catch? I mean, come on, 50 years for a mortgage, that's crazy. Like I mentioned earlier, President Trump has proposed a 50-year mortgage to help with home affordability. The director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, Bill Pulte, who was appointed under President Trump, he's confirmed that the agency is working on a 50-year mortgage option, which could be a complete game changer, maybe positively, maybe negatively, we'll see. So what does a longer term mean? It's almost twice as long as a traditional 30-year mortgage. Like I said, a longer term can reduce the monthly payment amount, which means you're gonna be paying more interest likely. That could give more flexibility to first-time home buyers or people that are on the edge of qualifying but can't quite qualify for that 30-year mortgage, especially in high-cost markets. Think places like Southern California, New York, and the surrounding areas, places like that. So what are the trade-offs for the 50-year mortgage? Let's look at it. Okay, so this came from Market Watch, and I thought this was kind of interesting. It says with a median home price of $415,200 with 20% down, which is around $82,000 to $83,000. If you have an interest rate of about 6.2%, for a 30-year mortgage, your principal and interest would be about $2,034 a month. Now, if you take all of that and apply it to a 50-year mortgage, according to Market Watch, the principal and interest payment would drop down to $1,798 per month. Now, you might be like me and you may say, oh, wow, I get 20 more years of mortgage payments and I'm only saving $200 a month. That doesn't seem like a great deal. One thing to take away from this is a very important caveat. I would imagine that if you are getting a 50-year mortgage, your interest rate is probably going to be a little bit higher because of the additional risk that the bank is going to take on for extending a loan out for that period of time. So in the short term, if you have a lower mortgage payment, that can give you some more relief for the rest of your living expenses. But there's something very important to think about: the total amount of interest paid over the course of a 50-year loan. When you add on an extra 20 years of mortgage payments, the amount of interest you're going to be paying over the life of the loan could be significantly higher. So to give you an example of what that may look like, we had ChatGPT help us out with some math. So we took that $412,000 house, 20% down, and for the sake of this example, we're going to use the exact same interest rate. That's going to be 6.2%. So for the 30-year mortgage, you have a loan amount of $329,600, monthly payment of about $2,019 a month. Your total interest paid will be $397,131. So the total you have paid for the life of that loan will be $726,731. All right, so let's look at the 50-year mortgage and how that would compare. Like I said, same interest rate, 6.2%, 50-year mortgage, same loan amount. and your monthly payment is going to be $1,784 a month, your total interest paid is a whopping $740,765, almost double. The total paid over the life of the loan is $1,070,365. Whoa. Look, I'm no mathematician, but that's a lot of money. So if you've never done this before, even on your current mortgage, or if you're considering a 30-year versus a 15-year, if you look at the total amount of interest paid over the life of your loan, it gets really depressing really quickly. Now, I'm no financial advisor, but if you can make a 15-year mortgage work, that's just less money you're paying to the bank and more money you're keeping for yourself, even though your monthly payments will be a little bit higher. So what are the potential benefits of the 50-year mortgage? Well, many home buyers are squeezed by those high home prices, high inflation. I recently read that the average age of the first-time home buyer is 38 years old, which is very high considering the history of first-time home buyers in the US. So that 50-year mortgage may help some of those first-time home buyers, and for people who are right on the edge of qualifying for a 30-year mortgage, maybe it will help them qualify for a mortgage and be able to buy a house. Some of those places where the house prices are so high, it's not even worth trying to get a mortgage or to buy a house. Now, maybe from a policy perspective, the 50-year mortgage could expand home ownership, could potentially help the housing market, which has been pretty stagnant over the past couple of years, and can help with affordability. I use the term affordability very loosely because your monthly payment may be a little less, but you're going to be paying a whole lot more interest, like I mentioned earlier. All right, so what are the critiques of a 50-year mortgage? What's the downside? This is my main point of the whole video, but as I mentioned earlier, if you extend out that mortgage to 50 years, the majority of your mortgage payments early on in the loan, and I'm talking for a few years, are going to be going primarily to interest. That means it'll take quite a bit longer for you to build equity in your home than with a traditional 30-year mortgage. For many homeowners who want to move in less than maybe, 10 to 20 years, you may actually be stuck in your house because you may not have enough equity to sell your house. And again, to repeat my point from earlier, the total amount of interest paid is almost double, at least in our example earlier. So keep that in mind as well. You're going to be paying a lot more interest to the bank. And of course, a 50-year loan means that you're going to be locked into debt for a longer period of your life, and 50 years is more than half of most people's lives. Another thing to consider is that let's say you finally are able to buy a house with this 50-year mortgage option. Sounds great, but considering that you're going to be building equity a lot slower than if you're on a 30-year mortgage, if the rates decrease pretty quickly after you buy the house on that 50-year mortgage, you may not have the ability to refinance if you don't have enough equity built up in your house. So that could pose a huge risk for people as well. If you have life changes, if you lose a job or something happens to where your income is not as high as it was when you bought the house, if you don't have the ability to refinance, then you could be stuck with maybe facing bankruptcy or foreclosure or something like that. We definitely want to avoid things like that at all costs. So if this does become a reality and you do end up considering a 50-year mortgage, definitely look at the whole picture and look at what the potential risks are. All right, so what are the takeaways from this? Like I mentioned just a second ago, understand the trade-offs. Lower payments are great in the short term, but that also means you're going to be paying obviously for almost twice as long as a 30-year mortgage, which means a whole lot more paid towards interest and not towards principal. But if the 50-year mortgage is implemented and it makes sense for you, then maybe you would have a path to home ownership that you didn't have before, and that could be a positive. Again, keep in mind your time horizon, because if you don't plan on staying in that house for a long period of time and maybe you want to move in 5 to 10 years, the benefit of that longer term may not be a benefit to you, because again, you're going to be building that equity very slowly. Another important question to ask would be, how will a 50-year mortgage option affect the housing market? Well, if you think about it in terms of supply and demand, if more people qualify for the purchase of a home with a 50-year mortgage, that means you have more buyers in the market than we had before, which means you have more demand for homes, and that could lead to higher home prices. And we already have high home prices as it is. Housing affordability is pretty much at an all-time low. And if house prices increase even more, what will that look like moving forward? And last but not least, I want to ask you a question. If a 50-year mortgage was on the table and you had that option, maybe your monthly payments would be a couple $100s lower. Would you opt for that 50-year mortgage? Tell me in the comments below. As always, my contact info is on the screen if you're thinking about moving to North Georgia or if you're considering listing your home in the area. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.